Vieni, chi sei?
Enzo Coccia.
Ciao Enzo, vieni,
Vengo
vieni.
da Napoli.
Are we ready to start? Ciao amici, I'm Master Leo Spizzirri, and today I'm super excited because we have something that's very near and dear to my heart. A class surrounded around the art of Neapolitan pizza. Now, for all of you that have received a packet like this, with a set of instructions to mix dough and making a marinara pizza sauce and a margarita pizza sauce and all this other stuff, this is great. But what I'm gonna give you is a super special experience that's probably once in a lifetime for most of you. But before I start, I'd like to thank all of our collaborators here at the Pizza University and Culinary Arts Center. I'd like to thank all of you who are joining us from all around the world. We have people joining us on this feed from literally all over, not only the United States, North America, South America, and someone even from Australia. How amazing is that? So, what are we doing here? I've got a very special guest that's here all the way from Napoli. This is totally unannounced, totally unexpected. You may have seen him on CNN. You may have seen him on a show called Searching Italy with a guy named Stanley Tucci. I'm here with my very good friend, Mastro Enzo Coccia. Enzo Coccia.
Ciao a tutti da Napoli. I don't speak English. I don't speak Italian. Only Napolitan.
Only Napolitan.
Lui interprete.
So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing our class, but I'm going to have some assistance from Mastro Enzo. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to talk to you all about the dough that we're going to make today.
One moment. Farina.
The point here is the flour itself. We're looking at something that's a little lighter in protein. The Neapolitan pizza, this dates back thousands of years, but more recently, let's say in the past 300 years, there wouldn't have been refrigeration available to make this dough. So the dough traditionally would have sat ambiently, okay? The dough formula that you received was with this intention. And if you decided to refrigerate your dough, the best thing that I can tell you is that make the dough, let it rise. After it rises for, let's say, maybe about 12 hours, take the dough, put it in a container, sealed container. Hopefully it's in sealed containers at that point, and then put it in the refrigerator overnight. Next day, if you need to take it out 24 hours later, it should still be at an amazing point. Now, along with Mastro Enzo, I'm going to show you the proper method to hand mix pizza napoletana. Perché non facciamo una spiegazione bene come si fa l'impasto della pizza napoletana? Ci abbiamo tutti gli ingredienti qua.
Allora, noi facciamo l'impasto per la pizza napoletana diretto.
We're going to do a dough that's considered direct method, meaning that we're going to use all the ingredients in an order and then mix them together at a certain method, right? And continue forward.
Senza preimpasti precedenti, solo gli ingredienti che si miscelano in successione.
We're not going to be using any kind of pre-ferments or starters or anything like this. We're going to be using fresh yeast, all our ingredients in a certain order of mixing procedure, and then we're going to continue. And this is the true Neapolitan dough.
Quali sono gli elementi per fare una buona pizza napoletana e un buon impasto?
Che sono in cane. What are the elements to make a perfect Neapolitan dough? These are them. We're going to go through them right now.
Farina.
We need flour. We're using 00 flour.
Sale.
This is salt, but not only salt, this is fine sea salt.
Yeast, lievito.
Lievito, which is our yeast. We're using fresh compressed yeast, and we're going to talk about this variation. If you can't find fresh yeast where you're from, I'm going to give you instructions on how to use dry yeast.
Che cosa manca?
Acqua. We need water. The last one is water.
Allora, quanta è quest'acqua?
500 ml.
No, devi dire di...
Io ti dico già che ti l'ho spiegato.
Ah, ok. Sale hai spiegato?
Sì,
ok.
Finito.
Allora, prendi l'acqua e metti tutta, non tutta.
Okay, so what he's saying is take the water, but don't add all the water, okay? We're not going to put all the water in this. Questo sono 500, un mezzo litro. Bravo.
Perfetto.
Okay. Poi,
metti il sale.
Now we're going to put the salt. The idea here is that when I start to
Sciogli il
mix this,
sale.
he's saying dissolve the salt, all right? I'm gonna use my hand.
Mantieni qua.
He's telling me to
Okay.
hold the bowl. Okay, so in this process, I'm gonna dissolve the water and salt together, right? So dissolve the salt into the water. And the reason that we're gonna do this is because of this next step. Perché usiamo il sale, sciogliamo prima il sale dentro l'acqua?
Perché praticamente non possiamo unire il sale e il lievito, se no il lievito muore.
The reason why we're not putting the salt together in any other method is because if we were to mix the salt and the yeast together, he's saying that the yeast would die because of the interaction with the salt.
Hai sciolto bene?
Sì.
Non ce l'hai più sotto le mani?
No, non si sente niente.
Okay.
He asked me if I dissolved the salt well.
Metto un poco di farina.
At this point, we're going to put a little bit of flour into this. And the reason we're doing
Okay.
this is because as soon as flour and water touch, they create gluten. So this little bit of flour, I would say even up to 10% if you wanted to put this on the scale. But what I'm trying to do is create something that's the consistency of maybe pancake batter. And that layer of gluten, as fine as it is going to create a barrier between the salt and the yeast when we start working.
Che faccio quest'acqua? Me la bevo?
No, he asked me, what am I going to do with this water? Drink it? No. The reason why he had us hold some water is because now he's going to dissolve the yeast into this little bit of extra water. So we have a total amount of water, right, which was 500 milliliters. That little bit of water that we kept to the side, he's dissolving the yeast inside, the fresh yeast. If you're going to use dry yeast, you would do the same process. You're going to need a very fine weight scale, like a jewelry scale, because you're going to need to take the amount of yeast and divide it by 3 for dry yeast, because it's a third of the amount. Water should be cold. Tap cold is fine. Tap water cold, which usually most people's houses, the water comes out of the tap at about 50, 55 degrees. I've created something that looks like pancake batter or maybe paper mache or something, right? He's going to put the rest of the water, right? He's going to put the rest of the water with the yeast. Any little bit of yeast that's still remaining in here, we want to make sure that we get it all out. This is such a small amount that we can't afford not to have it all in there. At this point now, the rest of the process is to get this flour
A pioggia.
in. A pioggia means he's going to kind of let it rain on top, right? A snow shower. And the reason why is because we're trying to separate the granulars, let's call it, of the...
Gira.
We're trying to...
No, gira orologio.
He wants me to turn clockwise because I'm using my right hand in like a watch, all right? We want to separate the granulars of this 00 flour because this came all the way from Italy and it's compressed, right? I'm
Schiaccio.
squeezing with my fingers as I'm doing this process, right? And he keeps telling me to go right-handed or clockwise with my mix because he feels that this is going to make some difference. Perché me ne vado come un orologio e non posso fare così?
Perché la macchina gira in senso orario. L'impastatrice.
Vogliono sapere se fai differenze se mettiamo il lievito prima dell'acqua e poi mettiamo il sale dopo.
Sì, perché il sale non lo riusciamo a sciogliere tutto.
He said the reason why we're not putting salt later is because we always risk that we're not going to be able to dissolve the salt well.
Lo sciogliamo solo in una piccola porzione di acqua.
If we were going to do the salt later in the process, we would want to dissolve it in some water just like we did the yeast. Now you'll notice that this is getting thicker and thicker as I proceed.
Liquido.
It's still liquid, however. As I'm mixing here, I'm turning this bowl because I want to also use the side of my hand to scrape it down. And I think he's getting more flour on my hand than in the bowl. Guarda qua. Vai, vai.
Work.
Oh my gosh, this is so great. Now I know there's probably people out there saying, Chef Leo, how come we're using such a dry dough? I'm not using enough water, blah, blah, blah. You have to remember, this dough, because it's not going to be refrigerated, we need to restrict it and withhold it. We don't want to use this dough before, let's say, 12 hours. 12 to 16 hours is generally the range of when this dough would be held ambiently and then finally used. In the process, as we continue, and Mastro Enzo is going to describe this, Ancora?
Pulisci le mani, così. Vai, con tutti e due, vai. Fai così.
Non c'ho farina. Aspetta,
Sì.
mi sporco tutto.
Dai, non fa niente, vai. Pulisci le mani.
He's telling me to clean my hands, but I'm not ready to clean my hands.
Ok,
Now I made this all dirty.
vai,
Sono tutto lordo, sporco qua.
No, no.
Perché?
vai.
Okay, now, if you're baking with your home oven, okay, the home oven unfortunately doesn't get hot enough to bake this pizza. So you're going to be at the mercy of how hot you can get that oven. Now, we have some hacks on how to adjust things and make your oven work closer to a Neapolitan oven.
Farina finito.
All the flour is finished, he's saying.
Lo dobbiamo lavorare adesso.
Now,
Work.
the oven setting, if you can get the oven set so that you have 2 pizza stones inside of your oven, the bottom pizza stone, what I'd like you to do is set your oven so that the bottom pizza stone is on the oven rack, set to about the halfway point inside of your oven, right? Maybe like the kind of middle portion, right? So kind of here. And then the second rack, I want you to go in the top portion. Each rack having a pizza stone on top. What I'd like you to do is set the oven as hot as it goes. So maybe it's 500 or 550 degrees. When we start the pizza, we're actually gonna stretch the dough, and I want you to turn on the broiler of your oven, if you have a broiler. I want you to put the broiler of your oven on, right? And at that point, when you're ready to launch the pizza, we're gonna launch it on the top stone, hopefully where the broiler is, right? If you have one of those ovens with the drawer and the broiler underneath, unfortunately, it's a little more difficult because you're not going to be able to do this method unless you're maybe on your hands and knees and launching from here. I don't know, it's very comfortable. So what I would say is, if you have an oven that's got a broiler on top, set the pizza stone on the top rack, okay? As you launch that pizza, we're going to start it under the broiler, which now will get you up to a temperature of maybe 650, 700. And then we're going to hold it there for maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes, right? At that point, once the crust is set and it's firm enough to move, we'll transfer it to the bottom stone and finish it there. And you should have a beautiful color. And with any luck, you get some leopard spots as well. Tell me.
Work. Allora, adesso è pulita, clean.
Now, the dough in the bowl is finished. It's clean. As you're hand mixing dough, this is the art of Neapolitan pizza and mixing this dough. Enzo is taking this dough, and you'll notice that he's kind of slamming it on the counter as he's working with it. That slamming of the dough is physical work, and it's actually forming the gluten. The second part that's important is this kneading step. He's going hand over fist. He's taking the dough, he's rolling it towards himself, and then stretching it into another like long piece. At this point, you see how he's elongating it? It's already, the gluten is already starting to show strength. At this point, you see he's still kind of kneading and turning it. He's almost to the point, though, where he's going to start checking it for development inside, meaning how is the dough finishing, right? Come si senti?
È soffice,
He's saying the dough feels soft,
elastico,
elastic,
è resistente.
and it's resisting, meaning that the gluten
Stiamo
is forming.
cercando di influssare aria all'interno.
And the reason why he's doing this movement, the way
Chiudiamo
his hand
sempre
over
le
fist,
pieghe.
he's saying the reason he's moving his fist like that is because he's allowing air to go inside of this dough. And the
Cambiando
idea
colore.
is that we're changing the structure, where we're trapping air inside the structure. And as we start to add air into this, the dough is changing even in color, right? So all these things together are the principles of basically a dough being made at a time without machinery or electricity, right? At this point, when we finish this process, this is going to be one of the most beautiful doughs you've seen worked by hand, because there's no way you can overwork this dough. You'll be overworked before the dough ever will be. What we need to do is give this time to rest. Sometimes we refer to this as bulk fermentation. This process can happen in up to 2 hours, depending on ambient temperature. The idea is that we've got enough time to allow the water to absorb into the flour, and then up to 2 hours. Once that happens, we're ready to go ahead and divide the dough. what I want to do is, I'm actually going to do this backwards. Faccio indietro, così lo coperchio, faccio un coperchio così. Va bene? Mettiamo questo così e lo manteniamo così. Now, while this is happening, if you haven't seen what we do here at the Pizza University and Culinary Arts Center, you can go to pizzauniversity.org and check us out today.